So hey guys, let's continue our Cat Island lessons. Um, I'm looking at my blue house that I did before, and I realize that my perspective's off, and this will happen to you. You might have drawn it. It's sometimes hard to draw everything in perfect perspective. The grid's there, the roads are there, but sometimes you'll just draw it wrong, and you'll be like, "Oh no, what do I do?" You don't have to redraw it. I could look at this house and see, well, most of it's correct, and I could take that house and fix it up. So what I would do if I were you, if you made a mistake like this, is go to your eraser tool and just erase portions of it that are incorrect. So I can still keep that second half. That's still good. Go to my inking pen and go to a small brush, and using the grid I can see where I went wrong. This line should match this right here. Okay, so I'm going to undo. So that's where I should have made my lines. Okay, and then the top one will just kind of match that, and then I can kind of get in there and correct my house. Okay, so if you make mistakes, it's totally fine. Now remember the dot down here will let you get to the eyedropper. I can go snipe, whoops, I can go snipe that blue. I gotta do it again. Go to the blue and then just go down and tone to get the shadow color for that side of the house. And then get the eyedropper again and snipe that shadow tone at the top. And clean it up that way. Okay. So if you make mistakes, it's okay. I'm going to do the little turret window again. Turret like a castle turret, or a tank or a fort or something might have that. Oops. And I'm going to zoom in so we can see it better. It's a little fuzzy at this magnification because of the resolution. Okay, and then remember your eyedropper, snipe, and then I can kind of go in there and I'll just divide it in half. Okay. Okay, and then I'm just trying to fix up the window here. All right. Okay, so kind of fix the perspective on my house. I mean, it's not perfect. I would need to work on it a little bit more. But here's a new trick you can do today. I don't want this video to be too long. Like the last super long movie that I made, Mr. Dubin's super long, very, very, very long lesson that you'll do for this. We do have 3 weeks on this, so you don't have to watch the hour-long lesson that I did all at once. You can kind of take it in pieces, but there's a lot of good tidbits in the lesson to learn about, like things that you're going to be doing for your house and stuff like that. Remember also you can lock the pixels, and you can go to like the airbrush and pick a brush and kind of pick an opacity and kind of get in there and create, better shadows for your house. If you don't lock the pixels, you can also create shadows that the house itself would be casting on the ground, like that. I'm not going to do that yet, though, because I'm going to show you a trick to do with your house. So this is the trick. Go to the layer, make a new layer. Go to your layer with your house and click on it and copy it. Where does it say? There it is, copy. and then you can go to the new layer and click um, paste. Okay, then the transform tool at the top will come up, and you'll take the ring, which will allow you to move it. Okay, and then with that, you can flip it. I have to zoom out because sometimes when you flip it, it moves it way far away. So you see like it's way over there now. So I'll have to go back to my transform tool, go back to the ring, and um, drag it back over. I don't want to scale it up. So I'm going to undo that. So be careful, I scaled mine up by mistake. I just want to drag it over. It's not as easy to manipulate as Photoshop. Let's zoom in on it now. There was an error that I made right there. Sometimes when you're dragging around with your finger, you make a little error like that. So I'm just going to go and erase it. Like a scratch. And hit back to the moving tool. So you kind of, just do it in stages. So you see what I'm doing here? All right. So hit done. And I'm going to merge those two layers together now. So you can click on the top one and go to merge. So now those are one layer. Okay, so how do I turn this into like an L-shaped house? Well, we go to our eraser tool and we just erase here and we erase there. And we get our ink marker and we create our lines. And now I've joined those two houses together. And then I just have to go get my eyedropper and snipe some color. Now remember I added a highlight with the airbrush there. So I'm going to have to possibly fix that up as well. But if you do one really good building, like I did, you can easily take and do another one. I lost a little resolution when I copy pasted it. You can see it got a little fuzzy. Sometimes this happens, a little bit of a glitch. I might have to go in there and, fix up those lines again. That's okay. Not a biggie. We're constantly in art, refining, fixing, redrawing, all that kind of stuff. This building needs a lot of little touch-ups. You can go get a lighter shade, maybe change the hue, and do my L shapes, highlights, my windows. They're going to be so small it doesn't have to be perfect. Oops, did that one on the wrong side. Okay, anyways. Now my lighting's off, so I'm going to need to go and snipe this blue here. That'll be a mid-tone, so I might lighten that up. And then go to this building face, which might be a little bit more in the sun, and fix up my highlight. So hopefully that you watch this lesson all the way through. I know some people are tempted to speed through it, but get some good tips here. Alright, so change my, my lighting. And now the whole thing, I just, what I do if I were you, I would lock the pixels, go to the airbrush, get a dark tone. Doesn't have to be black, it could be dark blue or whatever, and kind of go in there and do some new shadows. Like definitely in the corner there, it'll be darker, that kind of thing. Okay, so um, I need to fix this up a little bit more. I'm gonna go to the transform tool and go to the moving tool and move it wherever I see fit. Maybe this would look good up on a corner. Maybe this building now I move down here. I'm not sure. My perspective will be off there with that building. My gazebo is much too large. Go to the scaling tool, go to the circle. Okay, probably like that. Anyways, you kind of get the idea. Let's zoom back out on how to do and adjust your building. So if you do one good building like I did, you can do some pretty cool stuff. All right. So next I'm going to do some trees. All right, guys. So I'm going to show you how to do a basic tree. You can kind of see one that I already did up there. Easy method is to take your inking pen tool and to get a pretty decent size like circular brush. And I usually start with a darker tone or a mid-tone for my tree color. This is a basic tree. I'm going to do a like a palm tree next. So you kind of like go in there and just add, it might even be too big, sort of circles. Try to overlap them a little bit so that you end up with some different sizes, sort of like that. And if you want to, make some more distinct than the others, you can. Then go and get black or whatever your outline color is going to be. Go down in brush size and you're going to trace the outside of the little arches. Now to get those to look a little bit better, you want to go back to your pen tool, go back up to that large circle brush, maybe go get your eyedropper and snipe that color, and then kind of redo the arches a little bit, cutting into that area, and you'll get a really nice kind of hand-drawn look with not so heavy edges. Okay, and then you want to go to your airbrush and you want to go get a lighter. So I'm staying on the same hue. I'm just kind of like scrolling around in there getting lighter shades, and I want to play with my opacity and stuff like that, and brush size, and kind of get in there and paint in some highlights. Also want to go get some darker tones, paint in some shadows. Okay, and then you repeat the process. So you go and you kind of like do it in layers. So I go get my green tone, my mid-tone, and create like my next tree layer here, like so. And get a small brush, get black. You can stay on the same hue there. And repeat the process. This exact technique can also be used for poofy white clouds, using different colors, which I might show next week. All right, so then we go to our eyedropper and snipe that color. Go back up in size and do the same thing, maybe too big. Okay, and then go get our airbrush, which is a wonderful tool, and kind of paint in some highlights there at the top. Okay, and then you want to possibly um, repeat that process. So then you would get your eyedropper, go snipe a color, go get your inking pen tool, use a pretty like that. Try not to be so even like I am. And then get your black color, and you'll have a super duper amazing tree. Okay, and then of course, then you have to do the same thing. So we go get the eyedropper and use its powers to get some colored samples. Like so. And then we go get the eyedropper again. Maybe try to pick up the highlight or the airbrush. Okay, you can kind of touch up your tree that way. Okay, and then don't be afraid to like just keep modifying it. So never be afraid to edit your artwork. Some people are like, "Ooh, I barely did it," and I don't want to touch it. I don't want to mess it up. But you have to kind of get out of that funk and be able to just like be brave and not be afraid to mess it up. So I can kind of go in there, do another little layer there, get a big round brush, get the eyedropper, eyedrop a tone, and kind of go in there and fix up those lines. Get the airbrush and use its amazing powers to get some highlights in there, and then pretty soon, you have a pretty cool tree going. What you can do though afterwards is go to your inking tool and go get a really nice highlight. And remember how like on the character, um, we went in and did some hard highlights. That's too big. So let's try to get a small little brush. And I'm thinking that's way too bright. So we have to go down. So undo. Oops, redo. Alright, there we go. According to where your highlights are, I don't, sometimes, like right now, I'm completely ignoring my light source because I could always flip this tree around. Remember, you could always go back up and fix that up. You can always go to the airbrush and kind of blend those highlights in. Sometimes you don't want them to be so crispy, like little strings there. Sometimes, kind of tapping them a little bit with the airbrush um, can blend them in. So like how I kind of go to the bottom there and sort of blend them in a little bit nicer. The airbrush is really a good tool for blending and stuff like that. Okay, and then just touch up your tree. When you're ready to do the trunk, just go get a really dark shade of brown or green or whatever color you want to play with, and your trunk. I need to actually get a black there kind of want to spread it out and do sort of the roots. So, try not to make a lollipop tree. So you don't want to just like do this. Wow, that doesn't look half bad, artistically speaking, if you do a lot of undos. Kind of like give your tree a little bit. You can even add like a branch and give your tree like a little bit of a curvature to it. You can add several branches. Then add your trunk. And then sort of like you want to draw on the roots at the bottom, sort of like chicken feet, like that. Okay, and then go get your trunk color. I think I'm gonna try to go get a more of a brown. Kind of if you go to your yellow orangey range, you can kind of get to some brown tones. If you fill in with black like that and then go in reverse, you can kind of do the lines this way at the same time. It's sort of a different drawing technique. And then, like lock the pixels. Go to your Mighty Super Duper Airbrush and so take that up a little bit. Add back in some of those shadow areas. One side of your tree is definitely going to have a highlight on it, so you're going to have to figure out, where is your light source again, and then kind of, get in there and draw on those highlights and stuff like that. Anyways, if you feel like your tree, like I'm looking at my tree and I'm like, oh, it's too light, I don't like the green, you could, it doesn't, you could always use the airbrush, or actually, let's go snipe that color. I kind of like that green right there. And go to my airbrush and just put it on low opacity, the big brush, and kind of just go in there and tint my tree down a shade or two. So like if you did the wrong color, you don't have to repaint it. My pixels are locked, and I can kind of take my tree down. See how I'm really like darkening it or changing the green to match that other tree. So you can fix it up that way. To do a palm tree, I'm going to do that on a new layer. And I'm going to quickly get some blacks. I don't want to go on forever and ever and ever and have you guys going, Mr. Dubin does the longest, stupidest, dumbest lessons. So I'm going to get a small itty bitty brush. I'm on a new layer over here. And with the palm tree, you just, you draw in the palms. And you kind of like have to picture them in your mind's eye, like how they would droop. They're usually like little crescent moon shapes, like that. You kind of want to leave room for. They're usually like double-sided. You want to kind of like leave room for the trunk. If you mess up, just go in there and eradicate, destroy that leaf. And don't be afraid to draw, like I drew on top of that other one. So, there's my palm. Gets skinnier as it goes up. And I just have to go get my greens. So, I guess I'll just use the same tool. But I will go and eyedrop similar green. I dig that one. Okay, so it requires, if you do the way that I'm doing it, you could always put the lines on a different layer. I'm kind of just winging it all at once. The other side will be lighter. This tree will require, because of the technique that I'm using, and remember everything we show you is this technique. And there's a million artists out there, and a million artists use a million different techniques. Everybody's got their own way of doing things. Um, if you deviate a little bit, that's okay. From what Rodriguez and I do, you don't have to worry about it so much. So to kind of do those in sections. I'm not going to put any coconuts on this tree, but I could. So we'll go get a darker shade of that same tone. Okay, and then I would go back to black and kind of try to fix up my lines again. It's always a refining process. So whether you start off with just doing the lines on a separate layer and then kind of cleaning it up that way, or you're doing it all at once like I'm doing here, there's always going to be a refining process where you go back in, clean things up. All right, so now we're going to go to the airbrush, and you kind of want to make my shadows with a dark green rather than a black. Like I said, you can use dark greens and purples and blues for shadows rather than black. Sometimes looks better. Um, Black's nothing wrong with black. I mean, the famous Renaissance artist Rembrandt used like 39 different shades of black in his paintings. He was like a master of it. So you can, if you want, use whatever color works for you. All right, so opacity, brush size, opacity. Okay, with the sliders, and that's where I would go in and oops, you know what I did? I didn't lock the pixels. Lock the pixels. Lock them. Okay, and then kind of like I think I need a bigger brush. More opacity. Okay, get in there and kind of add some more shadows to the tree. Okay, now with trees are going to have shadows. So when in their houses are going to cast shadows. Everything's going to cast shadows. See, like my tree looking just like floating there, it doesn't look exactly like it fits in. But if I go to an opacity and a brush and unlock the pixels, I can kind of add in a drop shadow for my tree. Go to the other tree and add a, is it locked? No, it is locked. And add a drop shadow for the tree. Okay, and now those trees are actually blending in better. Now they're too gigantic, they're like King Kong sized trees. So that's where you would go to your scaling tool, and don't know why I didn't scale just now. Let's go, oh, I did a little bit. Let's try it again. All right, scaling captain. There we go. And hitting done. And then going to my palm tree and going to the scaling tool. I showed you, scale it down and hitting done. Okay, so I have two types of trees here. Um, I wouldn't have them together. They probably wouldn't look very good. But if you wanted to make like maybe a whole forest, let's say I take that layer and I duplicate it. So I have two. Take one of the duplicates and go to your transform tool at the top and flip it. Remember, when you flip it, it sends it to the far side of the universe over here, and you'll have to go to your moving tool and move it back. Okay, but in that process, take the tree or I'll take the copy and duplicate it. It goes on a new layer when you do that. Super magical. And if my layer is in front of the other tree, maybe I also, you can rotate it a little bit too to make it look like even like a third tree. Um, if you do a tree well enough, you might have to go in and touch up shadows and highlights, but you can turn technically um, one tree into a whole forest like that. Remember, copies don't count. You need 20 to 25 things like geographical features, and geographical features means plants, rocks, even atmospheric stuff like clouds, fish, mermaids, permaids, critters. On old maps there used to be here there'd be dragons and like a sea monster or a whale or birds, a monkey hanging from a tree. Just have fun with it. The more fun stuff you put in it, the better it's going to look. So you need 20 to 25 minimum, but that doesn't mean you can't go over. Copies don't count, so only one of these palm trees counts towards that total. You need 20 to 25 structures, so that means buildings. Okay. Let's turn off that tree. It looks like a big green brain up there. Uh, anyways, I'm hoping you're having fun with this. That's the intention. And we're kind of developing our map and the style for this would be like visual development on basically like a game. When they do games and movies, they just do the hundreds of artists will do visual development sketches. They'll do maps like this. They'll do sketches of the houses, the plants, the terrain, the geographical features to design how the game's going to look, to design how the movie or the animation's going to look. And they just start off just like this. They kind of like, okay, like what's going to be the map of our game? There's always a map, an environment. What are the levels going to look like? What are the environments going to look like? How is the style of art going to look? And they just don't like, oh, here you go, here's a style. They develop that over a process like we're doing now. Um, so have fun with this, and in my next lesson, I'll probably show how to do some poofy clouds, um, or maybe a rock uh, for your island. Mr. Dubin out.